1,000 residents in the city. They had been shutting off water for years, but nowhere on this scale.
Welcome, beloved community. We are back again with yet another installment of the People's Water Board Coalition's Water Wednesdays webcast. As always, I'm here with my beloved co-host, Valerie Jean.
Hi, everyone.
And we can't forget our behind-the-scenes tech guru extraordinaire, Miss Angelica, who keeps us running smoothly and consistently week after week, bringing relevant content to all of our viewers. And today, we have two guests, which is something we've done in the past, but not very often. So this is almost a special occasion for us. First, we have Miss Maya Albright, who is a youth environmental activist and an organizer for the Three Rivers Pipeline Resistance Team and Climate Defiance. Thank you for being here, Maya. And then we have Mr. Andy Pearson, who is also an organizer with the Three Rivers Pipeline Resistance Team, but he's also an organizer with CURE, which stands for Clean Up the River Environment. And we're so happy to have both of you here with us today. And it's a short show, so we're going to jump right into it.
Thanks for being here, guys.
So happy to be chatting with you today. Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for having us on.
You know, it's always special to be in space with you all. Andy, we've been at this for a long time together. You know, it's an important show. I went to Minneapolis to training last weekend, and it was inspirational and wonderful, and I couldn't wait to share all of the details with folks. And it is a short show, so we're going to jump right in. Andy, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell our viewers about the movement to end fossil fuels and what the Enbridge mainline system is? So, folks, we're talking about Enbridge. We talk about Enbridge a lot on this show.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, so a couple of pieces there, right? It's a group of organizations calling themselves the Movement to End Fossil Fuels. And so at the national level, these are mostly organizations that work nationally. So that's Center for Biological Diversity, Climate Organizing Hub, Earthworks, Food and Water Watch, People's Action Institute, the Center for Popular Democracy, Oil Change International, and the Oil and Gas Action Network. So these are national organizations that for many years have been kind of working along the angle of what are we doing around climate from a supply side perspective rather than a demand side perspective, right? How are we working to reduce the supply of oil and to take on some of those oil producers and transportation companies that really are making money hand over fist right now, delivering this terrible product and working to build markets for it, right? Working against our interests as people who care about water and climate. This Movement to End Fossil Fuels group of organizations has been doing these trainings across the country, a few states. We are so happy that you were able to join. Long drive, and so glad you made it to join for the training that we were part of the hosting team for in Minneapolis, along with a really wonderful organization called Copal, who we partnered with, and they hosted it in their office there. So, but the root of all this is, where is the fossil fuel industry contributing, which it is in so many ways, to rising authoritarianism and fascism, and to the attack on the idea of climate action is important that we're seeing at the federal level and also in many other states. So how are we working to rebuild organizing power, base building power, the ability to hold and exercise governing power? And where does that get connected to this huge fossil industry and set of infrastructure? So leaping off of that to the infrastructure, the Enbridge mainline, right? As you said, Valerie Jane, man, we've been thinking about Enbridge for a long time.
We talk about Enbridge a lot on this show.
Yeah.
And
Arch nemesis.
It's engaged in so many fights because it touches so much of our fresh water, and it's a huge contributor to climate, which, as we know, is a massive multiplier of the risks to our water and land. So the Enbridge mainline is about a 14 pipeline system that carries tar sands crude oil from where it's extracted, which is up in Alberta in Canada, pretty far north, Fort McMurray area, carries that oil across Canada and then across the upper Great Lakes region through Minnesota, through Michigan, through Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, and a little tiny bit of North Dakota. And the amount of oil transported, it's just over 3 million barrels a day. A barrel is 42 gallons. That's an awful lot of oil. If we look on the global level, it's about 3% of all the oil used
Massive.
on Earth travels through the Enbridge main line. 3% is a small number, but when we're talking 3% of every drop used on the planet, it's a huge number actually. So that's a huge concern for us here. The type of oil, this tar sands oil, tar sands or oil sands, really known as one of the dirtiest oils for our climate. You see estimates between 20 and 30% more carbon intensive than other forms of oil. And it's because of how energy intensive it is to get out of the ground, how much you need to put into refining it. Just a very dirty product.
And it uses a whole bunch of energy and water to refine it. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
what's refined in the Marathon refinery here in Southwest Detroit too. And
And
it's just horrible for the community there.
y'all are right there on the front lines of that. And it's just horrible stuff. You see issues right with pet coke coming off of it, these byproducts that you get out of the refining. And you see the amount of effort that it takes to even move it through pipes, given how thick it is, how you've got to dilute it, and how that adds risks when it spills. So
Definitely.
wrap it up right. This is a huge piece of infrastructure, and even though it's 14 separate pipelines, one of them is, of course, Line 5, one of them is Line 3, which I was involved in opposition to when that was rebuilt in Minnesota on a different corridor a few years ago. But to Enbridge, they're all one system, right? And it's all controlled out of a single control, building in Calgary, this like tar sands superhighway, bringing this oil to us. And so the idea here is we got to start talking about this as a system and talking about what it means to actually move the system away from expansion and towards decommissioning. So
That's right.
trying to give that big picture view on how the oil flows.
It's amazing to hear you talk about this, Andy. And one thing that just continually stayed stuck in my head was you talking about the sheer volume of oil that's moved through those pipelines.
Massive.
And you say it's 3% of the world's usage. And when you say that, it makes me think about the damage they can cause, particularly in Michigan, when we have 21% of the world's freshwater basins.
That's right.
So, I mean, when you look at it that way, 3% is not that bad to lose when you compare it to 21% of the entire world's fresh water source.
Well, you can't drink oil, right? You can drink you have to have water. You die without water. The ecosystems die without water, but you can't drink oil. So no matter what, the
Exactly.
it's a greater risk for all of the whole earth and humanity.
I
But
agree, and
I
it doesn't
imagine
take
they're
much of
standing
that
on their,
3%.
yeah.
Go on.
And I can just say, I can imagine companies like Enbridge and Enbridge standing on their soapbox complaining about that 3% in comparison to that 21% fresh water, though.
That's right. I don't care.
They
And the
don't.
last point I want to make about it, I totally agree, with you, and we're bearing the risk here in the upper Midwest, this really water-rich area. And while we do use some of this oil here, right? We use it for transportation fuel, we use it for other things, even though our demand is dropping in this region. Oil demand in most of these states peaked before 2005, and so it's been, it's not rising, it's falling, right? So but we are still stuck with the risk of having this infrastructure here. So as the Enbridge company is looking to expand, we see increasingly the actual place for that expansion to come is through using these states, this region, as a pass-through to move the oil to other places where they can sell it around the world. And it really becomes this question of how much is it our responsibility to be facilitating their quest for really what market share, right? Global market share.
Absolutely. It's just frightening to even think about it because we all know what happened in Kalamazoo when there was a pipeline spill. And I
Yes, we
just
do.
cannot
Line 6, I
imagine
was
it.
never.
Yeah, I can't imagine that happen on a larger level or any other level for that matter, knowing that that area is still not completely cleaned and completely
Yeah, it's
healed.
impossible to clean up tar sands. It's
Exactly.
impossible. You can never remediate the land, the water, all the species of birds and fish and animals that die. You can't fix it.
Exactly.
And I know that
Maya.
the listeners may be familiar with this, but the thing with tar sands, heavy tar sands crude, right, and a water spill is that it's kind of two components. It's the heavier stuff, and then it's a lighter diluent that it's mixed with. So of course,
Hmm.
when the lighter stuff volatilizes off, you're left with this heavy compound that's heavier than water, or at least heavier than the top of the water column, and so it sinks. Sometimes not all the way down, right, but it's so hard to clean it up because most of how we know to clean up oil and water relies on the oil floating. That old science experiment of pour the cooking oil on the water, look, it floats. Tar sands crude is often not doing that. So yeah, I agree. Incredibly hard to get it out of water once it's in there. Sorry, Nicole. Back over to you.
No, no, no worries. Maya, what are the cumulative impacts of the Enbridge mainline on the climate, water, and frontline communities, particularly?
Yeah, so many negative impacts that Enbridge brings to all these groups. We know that climate change is here and it is a crisis that we need to deal with extreme urgency. And like we said, at 3% of the world's oil, it is also the one of the most energy intensive sources of oil, and so it would make sense that this type would be phased out first. In particular, the energy return on investment, which is the amount of energy that you put in for the amount of energy that you get out. In traditional oil, it's about 1 to 25, so pretty high in terms of like efficiency. But for tar sands, it's only 1 to 3, and so it just requires an enormous amount of energy at all points of the process, from extraction in Alberta to transport through Minnesota and Michigan to the refining, and then of course to the actual emissions. It's just brutal for the climate. And so we know that turning off the oldest pipelines first, and saying no to expansion projects and rebuilding projects is how we need to decommission to ensure that our state's energy goals are met and our climate goals are met to quickly decarbonize. And we know that the climate change impacts are not evenly distributed around the world. The worst impacts will fall on communities that are already disadvantaged and have contributed relatively little to global emissions. And so we view decommissioning as an act of climate justice because we all know the impacts that are coming, and many that we don't even know that we will feel very deeply and already are feeling. And so that's I would say the climate synopsis. But in terms of water, we also feel that so deeply here with the Great Lakes, hosting such a large portion of our world's fresh water. And Enbridge has completely disregarded that and is responsible for, as you know, the two largest land-based oil spills in U.S. history, in Grand Rapids in 1991 and in Kalamazoo in 2010, both of which are still not cleaned up due to the complex chemistry that the tar sands oil is comprised of. It is just brutal for oil spills, but even outside of spills, the pipeline construction itself poses very steep risks to our water quality as well. For example, the construction of the Line 3 across northern Minnesota in 2021 breached several artesian aquifers, which caused plenty of damage that still persists to this day. At least 4 documented aquifers have been breached due to the puncturing of steel sheets that they use to pile down and then bury, which goes much deeper than what the construction plans allow because it's different than the pipeline itself, but it's a tool for building the pipeline. And one of our team members, actually, who's a drone pilot, this summer she went and took some drone footage of these areas to monitor and evaluate the geological changes, and she measured surface water temperatures that were over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this was in the summer when it is warmer, but 100 degrees on a natural lake in northern Minnesota is brutal. And if you think
That's
about
Yeah.
100 degrees
something
all year
unheard of.
round, yeah, it's not normal at all. And so there's a
No.
lot of questions as to how that's even happening, if there's heating going on to make sure it has a low viscosity so that the oil can run through the pipes. But yeah, especially considering we expect freezing in the winters here, having a 100-degree hot tub bubbling up would be so detrimental to the entire ecosystem. So
Yeah.
the aquifer impact should not be overlooked. And we know that the Enbridge mainline crosses the Mississippi River at many different spots during in the headwaters, and there are many active ongoing pipeline fights right now with Line 5 in Wisconsin and in Michigan. As we know very well, the Enbridge Line 5 in Michigan is currently being litigated as it operates beneath the Straits of Mackinac, and in Line 5 in Wisconsin, it's currently breaching an easement and trespassing on the Bad River Band Reservation, and so both are completely unacceptable and should be removed. And I would say like a final impact to our frontline communities that we see so clearly that you feel that we feel here in Minnesota is something that's often overlooked is the impact to the plants, and in particular wild rice, which grows very abundantly in many of the watersheds across the Enbridge mainline system. And wild rice holds a really deep cultural and economic importance for the Anishinaabe and Dakota people. And the collection and harvesting of this rice is protected under treaties, and it's very sensitive to changes in water quality and water temperature. And we've already seen a significant reduction in wild rice populations and growth in the last few years, and an oil spill and even aquifer breaches within these areas would completely make harvesting impossible. So it's absolutely essential for all of our communities. And I think something that's often overlooked also is the impact to Indigenous communities across the board. We know that when pipelines are built, work camps are often used to bring in workers, and these men stay in work camps or hotels, right? And plenty of research has been done to document the direct relationship between these camps and an increase in drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and violent crimes, all of which disproportionately affect Indigenous communities and Indigenous women, and in particular are linked to the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives epidemic that we see. I saw it was recently reported by the Star Tribune that over 450 women and girls went missing in Minnesota alone within the last 5 years, which is just an astonishing number, extremely high, and is an issue that is often overlooked and dismissed and not connected to this intersectional climate issue that we're feeling. And so Enbridge has a pattern of not respecting the local wishes of communities, of the water, of the people, of the land. And so, yeah, decommissioning absolutely is necessary on every.
Thanks for talking about the man camps and the numbers.
Absolutely.
Of those, because that's highly ignored when we talk about this movement. We've had a couple conversations about it here on Water Wednesday, but that number's pretty
astonishingly
It's very high. It's very high. Also, I would say I heard you speak about them breaching aquifers. I can imagine that would have impacts on water rates, particularly as the
access to
aquifer
people's affordable water.
lower. That would affect people's access, to affordable water. We know water affordability is very important to the People's Water Board Coalition. We've been fighting for it for several years. And just to know that here's another company that's going to contribute to increased rates on those very frontline communities that you talk about, which are the poor Black and brown and Indigenous communities, is frightening to hear, and should be another push for this company to be shut down and dissolved completely.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. And here on Water Wednesday, we really like to, it's important for us to connect the climate destruction and things like that to affordable water, because we're fighting for affordable water legislation here in Michigan, and people can't afford their water all over. And then to put that water in jeopardy in any kind of spill or anything, those rates fall on people. That's the cleanup, all of those things fall on communities that are already struggling. This is all the way around bad for the people, bad for the planet, and certainly bad for the water. This is, I heard that number from and it just got me pulling my emotions together. So what's next, folks? This is for both of you. What does Enbridge want? Because it's important for people to understand their intentions. And what do we want as a movement? What do we need? What do we want? Andy, we'll start with you, and then Maya, if you can chime in, that'd be great. Let's really get to the nuts and bolts of it.
Totally. No, thank you. So what Enbridge wants is growth. right? This is a company that's looking continuously to build what is their most profitable piece of infrastructure. And I apologize to everyone for saying this, but I did listen to Enbridge's investor calls where they talk about the main line, and the Enbridge executives on their investor calls refer to the main line as Big Daddy. That's the phrase they use. And they call it Big Daddy because it's the thing that's paying for their expansions right now. It's the steady cash flow that's giving them what they need to build this fossil fuel network further across this country. So knowing that, and knowing that the company has forecast a couple of phases of expansions of the main line between now and 2029, the first phase they're looking at is to actually grow that capacity by 150,000 barrels a day. They just said that over this last week that they got final investor approval on that. They haven't revealed what that actually looks like in terms of physical infrastructure. But the company is in a growth mindset. And I think for us as advocates, what we're working to bring is more of that degrowth mindset, right? How are we turning that idea around and saying, look, demand is dropping. The facts on the ground do not support a need for this expansion. What supports the need for the expansion is Enbridge's quest for market share, for profit motive, and because of how new projects are financed and how they're able to get the kind of guaranteed return, from shippers for some of those types of projects, right? So that's this big idea, right, of let's shut down the main line, let's decommission the main line. Nobody here is saying we got to shut it all off overnight. We understand that there are system realities around where oil flows and how people use it. Nobody wants to cause communities harm or energy shortages, right? But you can't get there if you don't start to plan. And you need to start planning now for the changes you want to see. And so we're saying we got to jump start this conversation about the future of this infrastructure and what decommissioning and degrowth looks like, and recognize that beginning to dial down this pipeline network is also the way that we dial down, the tar sands, one of the most destructive, extractive fossil fuel projects on the globe. So that we know that oil can't move without pipeline capacity for its takeaway, can't move economically, I should say, can't move in a way that justifies the financial decision to expand production. And so that's why you move forward with this idea of let's begin decommissioning. And I want to just say too, this is something where the Line 5 struggle is hugely important too, right? This is not one single lever that we can pull and say, all right, we've done it. We've moved towards decommissioning, because pipelines are mostly regulated at the state level, so you have many different jurisdictions that have the opportunity to have a say in this. There's a lot of different decision makers. So, it's a big idea, and the actual realization of that is in a lot of different rooms, places where power is held across, a large stretch of the upper Great Lakes.
Hard realities, but important.
Yes. And I just want to say that knowing that that's what they call Big Daddy just sounds so predatory for
Shutting down
so
Big Daddy,
many
so
You and me
different
both.
reasons. So
Yeah,
many
I'm
different
sorry. I'm
reasons.
always sorry when I share that
Yeah,
one, but
predatory.
it was just too perfect. I
It
was
was.
I'm
surprised that
glad
they
you
said
did.
that to their
We need to talk
investors.
about the hypocrisies, right? Like the insane,
I'm just
the
saying,
language that they're using for this.
I'm not mentioning any names, but I would beg to guess that it seems like they might have been on that little island that's been coming up a lot in the news lately. That's all I'm saying. It sounds very
You
predatory.
know,
Hmm.
yeah,
Very
no, it's
predatory.
yeah, it's interesting that they use that, but Big Daddy's going down. Thanks for that,
He must.
Andy. My,
Yeah, I can speak a
yeah,
little
give
bit
us
about
the
what's next for us and
yeah.
our plans for launching this campaign to shut down the Enbridge mainline. Ultimately, we need more people on our side, and so base building is the goal here, locally in Minnesota, but also, having these strong connections within the region and the country with other pipeline fighters, because these issues are so connected. Building our skill set and bringing more people into the movement. I think really capitalizing on this authoritarian and anti-fossil fuel wave that we are seeing, and helping to connect the dots between fascism and the fossil fuel billionaires, and really garnering the support and building the skills to articulate and communicate around these issues, solidarity between classes and races, and really just expanding our base building efforts throughout Minnesota so that we can have the team to act in offense in launching this campaign instead of always trying to play defense when new proposals come from Enbridge. So we are going to be having some type of launch party at the beginning of next year to really launch this website out, and would love any partners in this work to join us and really think strategically about the best levers for change and how we can be effective with our team that we have now and grow it to be even stronger.
That's great. That's great. I'm excited about the launch. I was excited to hear about it. We talk about Line 5 so much on this show.
Constantly.
And I've spent the majority of the last 10 years of my life organizing against Line 5. And it feels good to connect it all with the bigger system, to talk about how Enbridge affects us all globally, how Line 5 is connected to Enbridge affecting us all globally. And
Yes.
it's really on us to protect the Great Lakes. They're a gift to us, and they're sacred, and it's really on us to do that. So when people come together with this intention, and you start base building and connecting everybody together, there's nothing but goodness that can happen from that. And that's what we want. That's what we all want to see, really.
Definitely.
It's wonderful.
It's so funny
Those
that you said
connections
it
are
was our
so
duty,
important.
to protect the
It is.
Great Lakes. I don't know. I'm probably a little older than most of you, but I remember when I was in school how they taught us to remember the Great Lakes was with the acronym of HOMES. So we knew it was Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Superior, Erie, and Superior. And we would, as citizens, would do anything to protect our homes. And that's how we have to think of the Great Lakes. Those are our homes, and we will do anything to protect our homes.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
you
they
have
never
any
taught me
fun-
that in school.
That's how I was taught to remember the Great Lakes.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to teach my
And
grandkids that today.
yes, and when they think of homes, they're going to immediately know it's a H, it's a O, it's M. They know it. But with that being
that's great.
said, protecting our homes is just the only way I've always looked at it when it came to protecting the Great Lakes and the environment
right.
in general. With that being said, do either of you have any final thoughts?
I'll just say, the Three Waters Pipeline Resistance Team is a volunteer-led effort that's really been driving this idea in the Minnesota context here, around what if we started talking decommissioning rather than expansion, for the pipelines that run through Minnesota. And people can learn more and get connected and follow up with us, and we would love that, no matter where you are. So just want to say, Linktree, threewatersprT.ee/threewatersprt for team. The 3 is spelled out rather than the number.
We'll have it linked in the
We're going to
description
connect
box
that in
below.
the
Perfect.
description box down below.
Let's do
So
it.
that folks can go right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
would
so that they
recommend
can do
that
that.
folks
Thank you
follow
for
up.
that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maya?
Yeah, I mean, I just think frequently that climate change is the intersectional issue of our times, and the more that we can connect it to all environmental justice issues, the more people will connect the dots and join forces, because it's ultimately the working class versus the billionaires here, and we have to stick together. So I really appreciate you having us on and letting us share the work we're doing here in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Well, at the beginning of the year, we want to have you guys back on to talk about the launch, how people can get super involved. The folks that watch this show they're action folks. We get calls all the time where people are like, if I hadn't saw that show, I wouldn't known how to take action. So this is the place to have this. So everybody knows, and we'll have you back at the beginning of the year for the launch so that we can tell people how to get plugged in. Base building is so important in these times, us coming together. It saves lives, it's saving the planet. Thank you both for all that you do, for really committing your lives to this, to protect the water and the people. We really appreciate you and the work that you do. And, Nicole, thank you for always going down this journey with me. Water Wednesday is so special in my heart, and all of our viewers, that I love you. We love you all very, very much.
You too.
And times are really hard for folks. It's time for us to look out for each other. It's always time for us to look out for each other. And, try to stay afloat. Bye.
Thank you so much for your work. Real
Thank you.
pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You as well.